Well, I've got the race car back from Scotty's. He done the exhaust and the cooler pipe and that, if you watched the last one. It come up bloody awesome. So this would have been a pretty easy job for him. Pretty basic, but as per usual, he done a real nice job. So all that's done. Yeah, done a nice exhaust. As you can see, all nice and wrapped. And then under here, let's see if we can see under here. Got a decent sized muffler in it this time. I want it to sound more like my wagon, so hopefully the bigger muffler. The wagon still has a bigger muffler than that in it, but hopefully it sounds pretty similar. So I have tinkered a bit, and I've just tied up a few lines. So tied them up and done a few bits and pieces. He did have to move this res mount because it was like in here and it was just in the way of everything. So he pulled that off, and then for now, that's just where it's going to be mounted on this crossover thing, the coilover brace. So I've just put it there. That's good enough for now. I don't really have another option. I had a bit of a play trying to find out where to put it, and yeah, I don't know. So pretty much all I've got to do is put the methanol jets in. I know it's got oil, put water in it, and pretty much that's it. Whenever I've changed motors or whatever, it's always good to lock the computer timing to whatever, like you can lock it to 10 degrees and then check the timing on the harmonic balancer with a timing light, but I don't have a timing light, so I've just put the dizzy where it was in the other motor in the same spot, and that'd be good enough for now. But when they run it up on the dyno, you'll check the base timing, make sure it lines up with the ECU. What I'm going to do is just fire it up. I've got to bleed the cooling system. It is a bit tricky with the remount radiator, so I've got to bleed that and then warm it up, and I'll be checking the valve clearances. I'll probably just do the valve clearances because yeah, make sure they're all sweet. So that's pretty much it. I've got my laptop here, so we're plugging that in. We can check everything when we start it up. Yeah, make sure everything's running good, and yeah, go from there. After we start her up, I'll take her for a drive, and then yeah, she'll be ready for the dyno. Also, can't forget he redone the bottom of the radiator lines under there. You won't be able to see it with everything in the way, but that would not have been an enjoyable job. So I'm glad he got that done. So I was definitely not wanting to do that myself. So radiator lines all done. I'm just doing a boost leak check. I done the same on my wagon a while ago, if you've been watching for a while. And I found the same problem in behind the throttle body here, where the pin comes out that mounts the throttle body plate. It leaks behind the throttle linkage here. So it's funny that, yeah, both cars do it. It must be a common thing for these. I've never boost leak checked other than what I've done on my wagon and this now. So yeah, it's good to check for boost leaks. Obviously I'm going to be putting a fair bit of boost in it this time. So yeah, around 20. So yeah, to be able to pump it up to, I had it at 15 before. I got a bit scared because you don't know what's going to happen with your head under here. So yeah, keep tinkering with it. Everything seems pretty good. Nip up a few hose clamps and that should sort it out. This is a little bodgy thing that I made up. Bit of 4-inch with a valve in the end. So obviously you lose some through, like it won't hold pressure, but yeah, you can still hear it. Like you pump it right up and you can hear it. A bit of soapy water is good. Spray it around, soapy water, and then you see it bubble up. So yeah, something worth doing. Well, it's time to start it. So what I've done is I unplugged the cam angle sensor, then it doesn't fire fuel or spark, and I've wound it over. I've seen good oil pressure, and yeah, I've plugged it all back in. So now it's time to kick her in the gut. So I've got the laptop here. What I'll be watching is mainly just the ignition angle and the wideband. That's pretty much all I need to watch. The wideband is for the air fuel ratios. That's important to make sure that I've scaled the injectors correctly, because if I've scaled the injectors wrong, we'll be getting the wrong air fuel ratio. So as long as that sort of matches up, it should be sweet, but we'll fire it up. pressure, about 90 psi. It's still only just started, so it's a little bit rich, but we'll wait for that to settle down. The 12 volt alternator's not charging. If I flick that, the 24's charging. I know why that's not charging, so I've got to sort that out, but it's all looking good. So we can see the same here. It's just easier with the laptop plugged in. I can change stuff as we're going, but it sort of looks alright. It's idling a bit funny, but we'll have a play. So I've just played with it's got the coolant temp correction for the fuel when it's low coolant temps, but we're still seeing it's pretty rich. So, but you pick the revs up and it sort of goes a bit lean. It's a bit funny. I reckon maybe the wideband's not too happy, but I'll have to keep playing and see if I can sort something out, but it's going anyway. So now that it's over 40 degrees, you can see why it's such a good idea to run a wideband. So this table here is the long-term fuel trims that the computer does. So this references the target lambda table, which is that one, against the fuel table, and if there's any discrepancies, it goes in this one, and the ECU works it out itself. So you can see might start trimming soon, but you can see them coloured ones there. That's fresh fuel trim, so pretty cool. You can see the numbers changing. So the computer just works out, yeah, references back to the target lambda table and works it out in this. So essentially, like, that works at all RPMs. So the more you drive it, the more the ECU fine tunes the fuel table. So that's pretty cool. So if you watched when I got this turbo, I said it has the T51R mod, which offers no performance gain. It's purely just a sound thing. So I've got the intake off, and just have a listen. So it sounds like a bloody jet aeroplane. So that's what it does. It just whistles like crazy. All right, so I'm bloody happy with that. So I went out and bled the coolant up. I got a bit sidetracked. I didn't film any of it. It's not really that relevant though. So, but yeah, it is a bit tricky to bleed up the rear mount radiator because you've got a high spot here, and then the lines go under the car, and then you've got a high spot at the back. So what happens is you get an airlock here, and it physically won't push the air underneath the car and out the other side. So that's why I've got a bleed point here. I use this steam relief thing as a bleed point because that's also like the highest point at the front. So what I do is pull that off, fill that with water, undo that, fill that with water, fill the back with water, and then just run the car with that off and this done up. And then what it does is you keep feeding in the back, and then as the airlock gets pushed out, it gets pushed out to this highest point, and then it'll just start pissing out water until you get a nice steady stream, plug it back on, run the car, and yeah, you know straight away if there's got an airlock in it, because just sitting there idling, you know, it got up to 90 something degrees, and it never does that when it's idling. But as soon as the airlock's gone and the system's bled up, yeah, the temps drop dramatically real fast. So yeah, it is a bit tricky if you don't have like a hose. Like if you're filling it up out of a container or whatever, it can get tricky, because the hose is good because you can actually put pressure through the system, where if you're just filling it up, it sort of doesn't really do that. But anyway, so that's bled up. Turbo sounds awesome. So what I'm actually going to do now is, what am I going to do? I'm going to put the 35s on it, and then take it for a spin, I think. So what I'm going to do now is, while it's nice and warm, is do the valve clearances. So I'll show you how to do that. It's pretty easy, but you can hear the ticking of the rockers. So you can, when you adjust it, they just sound like pristine. It's actually quite satisfying when you got like, yeah, rattles in the rockers, and then you fine tune them, do the clearances properly, and then it just runs like a clock. So if there's cold clearances, they're 0.2, and the warm clearances are 0.38. That's for like a standard cam, but because this has got a different cam in it, it actually has different clearances for the intake and the exhaust valves. So keep that in mind. If your car does have a cam, you need to get the clearance specs from the cam manufacturer. So that's what we're gonna do now. I'll whip this rocket cover off, and yeah, I'll give you a quick rundown on how to do the clearances. All right, so get some gloves, some little ninja gloves, because it is hot laying on the motor. So once you get the rocket cover off, it's just all these bolts around the outside. That's pretty straightforward. If you've got a factory car, or you know, there's a bit of other crap, you got to pull off the intake pipe, and there's the leads from the dizzy. You got to pull that stuff off. And I think actually it's a bit tricky to get under the throttle body. You might need a uni end on like a quarter inch. I've got a quarter-inch drive with a Phillips head bit on it, and it's got a little uni on the end, so you might need one of them. I can't remember. So yeah, once you get all that off, be careful you do not drop anything in there, dirt or a bolt or whatever. Do not drop anything in there. Just have a quick look. So one time, what happened to me years ago is I actually, one of these bolts stripped out of the head, and then I went to do the clearances, and like, you know, these two adjusters were well and truly wound way further in than the rest. So that was pretty abnormal. And then we sort of had a look, and like, oh yeah, all that was doing is when you were adjusting the clearances up to push on the push rods, it was just lifting the rocker shaft up, and yeah, it pulled it out of the head. So that's something to be aware of. They all should be, all the adjusters should be, you know, nearly the same within, you know, but if you eye it up, you know, and there's a couple further out or further in, there may be a problem somewhere. So that's only happened once, and I've never really heard of it happening. So just whoever, it was actually in this car when I first got it going, the first race we done. Yeah, it was like the end of the second day, and we had this misfire problem, and what it was yeah, it wasn't opening the valves on one of the cylinders. So yeah, it was running on 5 cylinders. But anyway, long story short, so yeah, keep an eye out for that, and whatever else you might see, you know, just visually inspect everything, and if everything looks good, then go ahead and start adjusting the clearances. Another quick story, when I first put this motor in, like the motor in this car, when I first got it going, I never checked the clearances, which was pretty silly. It was an unknown engine just come with the car. Went to the dyno, he tuned it up, and then got it back, and the lifters were a bit noisy and it was making some funny noises. So we adjusted the clearances, and they were way out, like so far out it was ridiculous. I actually don't know how it was really running as good as it did. But when we adjusted all the clearances back to normal, it was like running like crap. Yeah, it was doing all sorts of funny stuff, made no power. So then we had to take it back to the dyno and retune it, and then it was mint. So the clearances were that far out, it was causing havoc with that. So yeah, if you've got a new motor, or you know, you got an unknown motor, or you're going to take your car to the dyno, I would recommend, yeah, just do your clearances before it goes, make sure everything's sweet, and you'll have no dramas. So I'll just show you on this motor because it's easier to see. Down here, you have your timing marks. So there's 0, 10, and 20 before top dead center. And on the harmonic balancer, if I can get it around, so you want it on 0. So when it's on 0 like that, you can see the, if you can see the little mark on the harmonic balancer lines up with 0. That's what I've got to do on that. So I'll do it now and I'll show you. So once you line up the harmonic balancer with the 0° timing mark, it'll either be number 1 at top dead center on the compression stroke, or number 6. But either way, it doesn't really matter. Just put it on the line. So if you've got number 1 at top dead center on the compression stroke, if you've got a dizzy, you pull the dizzy cap off and the rotor button will be pointing at like number 1 on the cap. But it'll be 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 10 will be loose. So as we can see here, number 1's rocking, number 2, number 3, and 6 and 7, 10, so on and so forth. So they'll be rocking. As you can see, we've got a valve fully down here, and there's a couple other with tension on them. So it doesn't matter. So to get to the other rockers, you would just do a 360-degree rotation of the engine, line it back up on the marks, and that'll be number 6 at top dead center on the compression stroke, and then all the opposing ones, so 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 10, so it'll be 4, 5, 8, 9, 11, 12, they'll all be loose on the next rotation. So yeah, just keep that in mind. It doesn't matter, you can do either one first, doesn't really matter. So because this is a different cam, like I've said, the specs are different. So on the intake valves, it's 0.016 of an inch or 16th hour, whatever, but that's 0.40 mil, 0.40. And then the exhaust is 0.018 of an inch or 18th hour, or 0.45 mil. So the clearance is a little bit bigger with this cam, but yeah, keep in mind, factory cam is 0.38, and if it's cold, I have done them at 0.2. There is one of the manuals has the cold spec in it of 0.2, which I've done before and it's fine, so keep that in mind. I'm just checking, I haven't adjusted anything, but you can see the feeler gauge slips in there, and it's got a firm resistance. That's sort of what it needs to be. If I check the exhaust valve, it's actually a bit tight. So yeah, I can't actually get the exhaust shim in there. So I'm gonna loosen that one off actually. And these intake ones, not too bad either. So far I haven't had to touch anything. So I've just gone around, I'm on the second rotation now. It seems that the intake ones have been pretty good, but the exhausts have been a bit tight. It seems like they've all been done at the same clearance. So I'm just going off and backing off the exhaust ones. It's not much, but yeah, you just never know what that might be doing. When it gets warm, could potentially be, you know, you might just be cracking the exhaust valve open, you know, and then you leave a bit on the table because gases are escaping out the exhaust when they shouldn't be. You never know, that's potentially what could happen. So I'm just gonna back them all off, or back off what I need. I'll show you how to adjust them anyway, because at the moment I haven't adjusted any tighter. So this is easy with 2 hands, but 12mm spanner, put it on the end here, crack it, and then you get your flathead screwdriver. Usually you'll do it clockwise, but you don't need much. So I'm gonna back it off a little bit. Like I said, it's easy with 2 hands, but back it off a little bit until that fits in there, which it still doesn't. So back it off a little bit more. It's a little too loose, so it's a little bit tedious, but it only takes small turns. I barely even turned it then, it's stuck in there. So you get the idea. And then when that's got some nice resistance to it, you got to hold the screwdriver so the adjuster doesn't turn, and then crack the nut back up and then check it when it's all tight. So pretty easy. So that's job done. I did see number 6, the intake rocker, and number 5, the intake rocker, were a little loose, so tighten them up, and yeah, she's all sweet. So you can actually get it going with no rocker on it. Just make sure you pull the ratchet and socket off the harmonic balancer, because that might whip around and smash some stuff, so keep that in mind. Now, how cool is it? It's actually awesome watching it. So that's just in an idle. Can't rev it too hard, but like, that's like 1,000 RPM. Imagine it at 5.5, they'd be going off in there. So you can't rev it too hard because the oil bloody pitches everywhere, but it's still awesome, nice and quiet now. Actually, it wasn't really that noisy before, but it must have been the last, the 2 rockers that I adjusted a little bit tighter. You could hear them at the back of the motor making a bit of noise, so it's quieting it down heaps. So purrs like a kitten. Well, everything looks sweet. So reverse the process, just put it back on, make sure the top of the head's nice and clean. Make sure this gasket is actually in properly, because I've done it when I was younger, is the back of the gasket slips out and you pinch it and you get it all down, then you run the car and it pisses out oil everywhere. So they do actually have these little tabs, and they're actually designed, you just pinch them with the pliers. They're everywhere, each little bit. You just pinch them with the pliers just a little bit, just to hold the rubber in the groove, and then slap it back on, do the bolts down. As anything with a flange like this, start from the middle and work out. So you'd go these two bolts, these two bolts, these two, and work your way out like that. And yeah, don't do them up too tight, because if you do them up too tight, you deform the rocker cover and can also cause a leak. So slap it all back together and good to go. All right, well, got 35s on it. Kind of looks cool with them. So yeah, going to whiz it down the road, just around the block. I don't want to go too far because of the no alternator, and I don't want something to happen because it'll be running the thermos and things like that. So just a quick lap around the block, just make sure everything's good. I'm going to run with no bonnet just in case, you know, something's loose or I see some oil leaks or whatever. So we'll go for a rip. Yeah, rip's pretty good. I'm only seeing like 9 pounds, surprisingly, 9 or 10, but yeah, she rips pretty good. Yeah, cruises along nicely. Well, we obviously still have an airlock because it is just cracked 100 degrees when I'm coming up the driveway, and it's never done that. So obviously I didn't bleed it good enough. So see, I've got water going in the back. Now we've got a nice steady stream. When I pulled that off, there was a bit of steam come out and then it was bubbling out. So obviously, yeah, still an airlock in there. But yeah, with the hose in there, you know, you can force pressure through there. And then I could see the temp gauge in here. So, you know, like I was sitting at about 98 and 102, but as soon as the airlock got pushed out, it just took a heap of water, and then the temp just went from like, yeah, high 90s to 100, you know, just shot straight back down to 85. So a bit tricky with the rear mount radiators. If you don't get it right, like, yeah, it could cost you a motor or whatever, you know, if I wasn't paying attention. But I know that's a problem. Oh, not really a problem, but I know you got to get that right. So that's why I didn't really go far up the road. Well, I'll wrap this video up here. Bloody awesome that we got it going. So the next time you see this, it will be on the dyno. I've just got to finalise a few things. I'll get Justin to come around and we'll fix that alternator, and then yeah, should be right to go. So next video, this will be dyno, and then the video with this car after that, we'll hopefully be driving it somewhere. I don't care if it's dry or wet or whatever, I'm going to take it out for a spin. So stay tuned for all that, and we'll see you then.